Hello, everyone. My name is Lucian. Most of you know me from Twitter as Triangle Investor. In today's edition of CEO and Market Expert Interviews, I am joined by Vizsla Silver CEO, Mr. Michael Konnert. Michael, welcome to my show. It is great to have you.
Lucian, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming. Michael, let's start with your career in resource sector. How and when did you start? What were your roles before Vizsla? How did you become a Vizsla CEO? Please give us your background.
Well, in short, I paid for my job here at Vizsla. I was a founder of the company. I put my life savings into it when I started it in 2017. And, prior to that, I basically started at the top of the last cycle in 2010. And I'd finished school and I was looking for a foot in the door, basically into the mining business. And I didn't really have any connections or anything. So I was kind of playing the part of a detective and chasing down leads really that I had and asking people if they knew anyone that was hiring and these types of things. So I was introduced to the fine people at Uranium Resources, and actually they not even introduced, but they gave me a phone number of someone there, and I cold called that person until they basically gave me a job, and I was doing anything I could at Uranium. They just completed, I think, a $265 million IPO. It was a huge IPO, and it was really an incredible company to take that Brucejack gold project from early stage exploration through to production. So that was my first start there with Robert Quartermain, who's an incredible CEO. I was very junior, but it was my foot in the door. And then from there I worked for a family office that was investing in the space, and I worked for a couple of junior mining companies as well. But along the way, really what I was trying to do was to understand each facet of the mining industry through studying it, basically studying the markets, studying companies and their projects, geology, what makes a project work. And really everything started to align for me when I started to get really strong mentors like Craig Perry. And Craig became my mentor and later my business partner when we started a cobalt company in the mid 2010s. And we then sold that for a substantial profit for ourselves and a very small group of shareholders. And from that point, I was able to welcome or honored to have Simon Smirlik become a mentor of mine as well. Both those gentlemen are on the board of Vizsla Silver, and we work together now. I've been very fortunate with working with some really really great people in the industry.
Yeah, you mentioned Craig Perry. You are a founder of Inventa Capital together with Craig Perry. It was founded in 2017, if I'm right, as investment group with the focus on investing in resource sector. Mike, please tell me more about the idea that you and Craig had. What did you achieve with Inventa so far? And the most important, where does Inventa invest capital? Which sectors, which companies? Tell us more.
Yeah, so we actually started Inventa and Viszla on the same day. And, Craig was actually still working with the uranium business that he came to Canada for, the ISO Energy and Next Energy. And, that's when I first met him, really was shortly after his move to Canada. We were introduced by a mutual friend. And, we had just sold the cobalt company. That was a good win for us. And, I'd always admired John Robbins and the Discovery Group, and so I just Googled what does discovery mean, or what was the word for discovery in Latin, and I just that's how we came up with Inventa Capital. Inventa just means discovery, and I told them that recently, and we have a good laugh about it. But our model was really kind of something similar, to create a platform for companies to basically grow and build and be incubated, and kind of keeping in mind that mentorship was important. So giving entrepreneurs the ability to kind of work within a framework was kind of our concept. And we definitely in the good markets we took on a number of deals. More recently we've been trying to refine our portfolio of investments and really focus on the highest quality assets, really, and highest quality teams. And I know that some of your listeners would be familiar with Cosa.
Yeah.
Keith Bodnarchuk is an incredible CEO and very, very, really a great entrepreneur. And, watching Cosa develop has been wonderful. And that's really like a typical success story that we'd like to see in Inventa. So, finding an entrepreneur with a passion and a commodity that they like, and really kind of giving the early capital, and then, supporting with other financings, chance to really work out a business plan. But we have investments in nickel, copper, lithium. Actually, we partnered up with John Robbins on our lithium company, Targa. So we've got investments across, really all the metals that are impacted by electrification. That's really the focus that we have. But for me, silver is really that most important metal, because it actually acts as both the monetary metal like gold, but it also has that electrification case as well, for solar panels and other high-tech applications. So right now I feel really comfortable with the portfolio that we have. We have, very strong, really high quality assets, strong leaders. And, in the last few days, the gold price has moved, and, the screen looks a little green again, which is nice to see. And, I feel like we're really well situated for the upcoming market, when it comes.
Yeah, so it's a multi-metal portfolio in Inventa. I want to just return a little bit on Cosa. What do you like the most about Cosa Resources story?
Well, Steve Blower, I've known Steve almost pretty much as long as I've known Craig, because they worked together, on the discoveries that they made at ISO Energy, the Hurricane discovery. And, Steve and I, had worked on some copper things as well. And I just know his mind for geology. So Steve Blower, is very strong as a geologist, but Andy and Justin and Keith all together are excellent geologists as well. So the brain trust the quality of those minds in that company. But really, what matters the most, and it kind of comes back to how we started this interview, is you asked how I became the CEO of Viszla. And I've got this kind of drive and pride for the company, and I was the first shareholder because I was the founder of it, and I put all the money that I could into the company at the time. Having that type of alignment with shareholders is so important, and I know we helped Keith I basically gave him the path how I IPO'd Vizsla for Cosa. So I know that he has a lot of skin in the game. The whole team has a ton of skin in the game, and it's just so cheap at 15 million market cap, when I think it could very easily be 4 or 5 times that, even without any meaningful discovery success. Beyond that, we look at Hurricane and Arrow and NextGen and ISO and all these companies that have done so well. So I just, it has the right combination of a CEO who wakes up and that's the first thing he thinks about, and the team that's also like that too. I'm sure they're just obsessed with their success there. So it's got all the right ingredients. So I love it.
Yeah, agreed. And let's not forget 10 uranium projects at very good locations, strategics, I would say, strategic location. Mike, that means that you are
just to add to that, for me, it's the team. The projects come last. Like that team, if there's uranium in any of those projects, they'll find it. But they'll always kind of find the right projects as well too. So I just trust that team. Sorry to interrupt, but
no. Okay, I agreed 100%. So that means that you are pretty bullish on uranium, right?
I am. Yeah.
Okay, what's your take? What is your take on uranium market? What do you think? Where are we now, and what can we expect in the future?
Well, I'm bullish, but I'm not an expert. I kind of defer to to Craig. Craig spent so much time in the uranium space, but what I'm hearing really is that it's a bit of a quiet whisper at a lot of these conferences right now that uranium is really slated to move higher. And I remember the last time that happened, these stocks, I think the collective market cap of these companies grew about 5 to 6 times in just a small move of uranium price. So it's such a small group. There's not a lot of players in it. There's really only a few places in the world that matter in uranium, and when that happens, it gets very exciting. So I'm excited about that. But I think probably the selfishly speaking, the biggest move I see, I think, is, I think silver has a chance to really do something very similar to uranium. And I think it's probably just lagging a little bit behind, the price movements in uranium.
Yeah, that's my next question. Silver and gold market, and you are an expert here. Where are we now at the moment in the terms of sentiment, supply and demand equation? Give us your overview of the precious metals market.
Well, I think what we saw, and I'll probably start with gold and just think about gold to start, because, silver often acts like gold, as a monetary metal. And so in the last 4 bull markets in silver, what we saw is gold move initially and then silver follow behind, probably a delay of 6 months on average. Yes. And then an incredible, eclipsing of silver, of gold by silver. And, as they always say, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. I think it's pretty likely that we'll see something like that again here. And so I look to kind of the macro picture, with the US probably leading the way. And what we saw is that the dollar index, the DXY, seemed to peak and roll over recently. And, that's a good indication that I think that interest rates, should be coming down here soon. And if that's the case, gold, I think we've seen this before, where this exact setup has preceded just an incredible run in gold. And I think that's what the gold price is telling us right now. It's not exactly there to go to all-time highs, but it's pretty darn close. Yeah. And, we're starting to see some of the bigger companies react to it. I think, today might be an early start to that. We've seen head fakes before. We don't know exactly when it's going to come and if this is the definitive move. Yeah. But it doesn't really matter too much to me, because I know eventually, eventually we're going to see it happen. There's a record level of debt in the US, really around the world. Yeah. But one thing that we haven't seen so much recently is this, historically, I should say, what we're seeing recently is the BRIC, the phenomenon of the BRIC countries, really moving together to back gold. And, it is the gold is flowing east for sure. And those economies definitely know the value of sound money. But, this is something that I think could add a huge amount of gas to the fire for the gold price going forward. Yeah. And then you add to it, geopolitical instability around the world and wars, and it's not things that you want to profit off of, but they are catalysts typically for the gold price, and something you have to pay attention to. So I think that we're gold is on its own fundamentally has the opportunity to really impress with the movement to the upside. But really what that means for silver is that that's a major part of what can be powerful for a powerful propellant for the silver price. But at the same time, we also have the electrification applications of silver that, the Silver Institute came out, I think, just yesterday, talking about, it's a huge increase to the overall demand that's coming from electrification and solar panels. And I make the joke that they might as well call them silver panels. There's so much silver in these things. Yeah, definitely. And if we used all of the world's silver reserves to build the forecasted amount of solar panels coming up here in the world, we'd run out of silver in 2050. So less than 30 years, we'd be out of this world's silver reserve. So simply put, there just isn't enough silver, and we're not finding it really in any kind of economic fashion fast enough. I mean, we are at Vizsla Silver, I should say, but the world as a whole isn't. So I see really an incredible setup for precious metals, but also metals that are impacted by electrification. And I think silver is probably the best way to play, because you have, if you could pick one stock, I would think, obviously this is not investment advice, but I would pick Vizsla Silver, because you have, the upside case for gold and the upside case for silver.
Yeah. Do you see, Mike, do you see a scenario that silver outperforms gold?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen that historically. It's not always, a long-term phenomenon, but, we've seen that happen in previous cycles where silver lags and then it completely outperforms and exceeds the gains that you see in gold. And that makes sense. It's a tighter market, it's a smaller market. And we saw that with, in 2020 with that silver squeeze. That was, that was only a small group of people buying silver. And it that was an incredible period of time there.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, let's discuss your company, Vizsla Silver. I heard a great story of how did you name your company, Vizsla. Please explain the audience, how did it happen?
Well, I'm actually not very creative, as I guess I said earlier with the names. I just ripped off the Discovery Group, and then it was it was a numbered BC corporation when we started it, so I had to come up with a name. And my wife wasn't my wife at the time, but
girlfriend,
girlfriend. Before we got married, we just bought a Viszla puppy, a dog, as the first step towards domestication, I suppose. And it was we were looking at metal, and Vizslas are copper colored. They look like copper, and they're hunting dogs and they're high energy. So I thought that's actually a good name for for a little company that's looking for a project. And at that time we didn't really, we had a copper asset in BC, but it wasn't for sure, it wasn't our final project, and we were looking for the right project. So I thought it was an apt name at the time. It's not, it doesn't make as much sense now that we're a silver company, but we like the name and we kept it.
No, it's original. It's great. I personally, I love it. Michael, your company has one of the highest grade silver discovery in the world, Panuco project. Can you give me an overview of this project? How did you acquire it, and what is the current status of this project?
Yeah, so it's quite a story because, as I gave the background there, we IPO'd Vizsla. It was about a $2 million IPO market cap wise, not dollars, but our market cap was about $2 million. And, I'd mentioned earlier about Craig and Simon, and I was, going around the world, going to places like Ecuador and Chile and US and, looking for mining projects. And I would kind of bird dog these projects and bring them back, and we would discuss them with Simon and Craig and see what was an appropriate project for Viszla.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was in Toronto, and a friend of mine, really good friend of mine, who we actually did the cobalt deal with, he had sent me a presentation saying, hey, take a look at this. There's a silver project or silver projects in Mexico. I think could be interesting. And that was a Friday night. I was having dinner with a friend, and I remember getting that email. I sent it to Craig. We looked at it over the weekend, and I think that Monday or Tuesday the next week, we went on a plane to Mexico to see it, because it was, it just stood out to us in that presentation. And that kicked off about a year, basically, where we were working with that prospector that had found, that originally found the project and was looking for help with it. We spent a year basically working with the families to come up with the agreements to purchase each half of this district. Really, it was two halves. And, so the little $2 million company at that time was maybe a $20 million market cap company. And we entered into an agreement to buy, the Panuco district for $43 million US. So it was a bit of a mathematical improbability at that time. People thought that we were able to, make that option payment. But the way that we structured it is we had, it's a 2-year cheap option. I think we paid $1 million to have the option for 2 years to explore it. There weren't any resources. It was really a brownfields district, but greenfields exploration. Yeah.
What are the next steps for this project, Michael?
Well, since that day, so that was 2019, the fall of 2019 that we announced that. And, we've drilled over 330,000 meters of diamond drilling in short period of time, really about 4 years, I suppose, or less. And we've come up with the world's largest high-grade undeveloped silver resource. And, it's only growing. So right now we're at the stage where we've done 2 resource updates about a year apart. And we're expecting to put out the next one probably a year from the last one. And that'll show, significant growth. So I think it's going to be clear to investors that, this is a district that with continued drilling is going to continue to grow. The best analog to what we're looking at here is San Dimas, and San Dimas is, about 70, 80 kilometers away. It's produced 600 million ounces of silver and 11 million ounces of gold. It's, it's one of the world's great precious metals districts. It really is. And, it built Goldcorp, it built Wheaton Precious Metals. It's First Majestic's top mine now. And I think that's what's possible for us. So in order to get there, I think what we'll show is that, this district has a huge amount of exploration upside still. Our resource sits in the west, really in what we call our center of mass in the west. It's a small area on the map, but it hosts all of our resources. And I think there's going to be many other centers of mass throughout the district. So really for 2024, what we're talking about is a dual pathway of de-risking the resources that we have already. So likely that'll include a PEA at some point in 2024. And then discovery, showing that there's still a huge amount of discovery left in this district. And that'll be done through, large scale exploration, which we are doing currently. We have 6 rigs on the property. We have a team of geologists mapping and sampling all throughout the hills. And, it's a serious exploration project. It's probably the world's biggest exploration project for silver.
Yeah, you mentioned the resource update. What are your expectations of it from that?
Well, we've always given the guidance that we think it's possible to see another 50 million ounces. And, so we have about globally, we have 220 million ounces of silver equivalent at a combined grade of just under half a kilo. Some areas are far higher grade. But I think that, very likely that we'll see that 50 million ounces in this upcoming resource. And then I think the grade could, stay relatively the same or improve. But I think eventually that, really the pathway for this project is to show that it has the potential to be a 1 billion ounce district like San Dimas.
Okay, in ideal circumstances, you said you have a PEA probably 2024, right? So, like I said, in ideal circumstances, what would be the timeline for first production?
Well, it's always something that we of course have in our mind, but mining is always full of surprises and things like that. But I think you could see a pathway to production in 2027 pretty easily, hypothetically. The steps for us to get there is working back from that first pour day. First production day would be probably about 18 to 20 months of construction and project and plant building. Working back from that, that would probably start after a feasibility study. And the PEA is really that first step towards that feasibility study. So you could see a pathway where the PEA kicks this off. Within a year to 2 years, we complete the feasibility study and do a lot of de-risking work around the resources that we have. And then it's about CapEx and CapEx financing and construction. But for us, we always like to look at Silvercrest as a comparable project, and the timelines that they did that in 2020 during the pandemic. They were actually able to be very successful with building a similar plant to what we'd be looking to do in that period of time. And then, when we think about CapEx financing, it's always something that in a difficult market, people are always kind of worried about, equity dilution. And, of course I am as well. I'm a shareholder, allergic to dilution, but what we're seeing here, because of the high grade nature and the near surface nature of the resources, the potential to bring high grade material forward in the mine plan and then pay off the property, the CapEx very rapidly, payback period is, short payback period, allows for, a good debt to equity ratio. So, we're looking at ways to minimize dilution to the equity, through debt essentially, or other financial tools. But, whenever we talk about CapEx, of course, that's years out.
Of course.
People always, say, well, what about dilution? And I like to reassure people that I'm allergic to dilution. We don't like dilution. Fortunately, in this business, something has to be diluted, but we're trying to minimize that.
Okay. I know it is pretty early to maybe to talk about that, but do you have a target for future production rate per year, approximately?
Well, internally, when we do our board papers and talk about our vision,
Just to have an idea of the size, if you know
we
what I
we
mean.
always believe that this could be a 20 million ounce per year producer. Whether PEA will say that immediately is another thing. Is there the potential to be between 15 and 20 million ounces? I think that's really possible. And then on the lower end, you could look at San Dimas, which does about 12 million ounces a year. But I really do think that there's probably a high probability of being somewhere between 15 and 20 million ounces, and then in the future, a 20 million ounce production profile. But again, this is all our own, targeting and vision and those types of things. It's not something that we've put out in a QP'd report or anything like that. So give that caveat. But this is the type of project that could support that.
Yeah, but how much of exploration work do you plan before the PEA is announced?
Well, really, there's with this upcoming resource, I think we'll be in a great position, to move forward. At certain point, you don't need to keep adding ounces.
Yes, of course.
I think at a certain point, what we're, in this kind of dual pathway of de-risking the existing ounces and then discovering, I think what having a dual pathway allows you to do is look at the district as a whole and say, okay, well, where's the next Copala, which is our major structure. Copala is a mile long and 10 meters thick. It's just, it's an insane ore body. And, you look at something like that and you say, okay, well, where are the other ones? Because we know that there's going to be others. These very seldom occur on their own. And as a matter of fact, we know of other ones that have been mined out. So we know that there are more Copalas out there. They're probably just subsurface. So, that's going to be over 100 million ounce structure on its own. So, what I'd like to do is that we step back on the district, our VPX and Dr. Jesus Velador and Dr. Peter McGaw are working together in our technical committee to basically look and say, okay, well, how do we make these big home run discoveries in this district? And so that's where to me it gets interesting. So, Viszla, I don't think will ever have that discovery upside taken away from it. It's a district that we consolidated for the first time in modern history. It's the size of the island of Manhattan. It's huge, and we've only explored 10% of it. So as far as the PEA, we're pretty much, I would say that this upcoming resource will be probably pretty impactful for mine planning, I would say.
I have read very interesting data, interesting metric on your website, and that is that total all-in exploration cost was around 19 cents discovered. That is very good. That is very low cost. So do you see a rise in exploration costs going forward?
Well, it's possible. With this upcoming resource, it might be pretty much in line, but the big part of that was making the discovery of Copala. Copala was adding ounces very quickly in that period of time. But either way, if it's 20 cents or 25 cents or something, it's going to be industry leading. And we're thrilled by that, because if you find an ounce for 20 cents, 25 cents, you get valued at 4 or 5 times that in the market. And I consider that to be undervalued. I think we should be more like 20 times that, but it's good math, right? It's as a shareholder, it's what you want to see is the drilling, is the work that the company doing capital efficient, and does it show return on investment? So there's, conceivably a 5x ROI based on every ounce that we discover and the valuation metrics we get in the market. So I'm very proud of that number, and it's a result of our team, doing great work at the project.
Good answer, Mike. Yeah. Can you tell me more about the location and the infrastructure there?
Yeah, definitely. So, we love to take people there because it's really accessible, and it's hard to really get the infrastructure without go into the project, but it's about an hour outside of the town of Mazatlan, the city of Mazatlan, which is a great city right on the beach in northern Mexico in the state of Sinaloa. And there's high tension power that runs from along the highways that go through our property. There's 2 highways that run through our property. Great communities of people that have worked in mining for many years, and it's got everything really that you need, including the craziest thing when you think about it, actually, we just kind of had this light bulb moment recently, is that we've drilled this resource and we've done everything that we've done here over the last 3.5 years without having to build a road. We've never built a road. It's all been off of kind of existing roads there, and that's probably saved us tens and tens of millions of dollars and allowed us to be very capital efficient. We were kind of humming and hawing over using a helicopter to lift a rig behind a ridge to do some drilling on another target, and we realized, oh, there's so much other kind of low-hanging fruit that we don't need to do that right now. But in BC or anywhere else, that would just be commonplace. For us, it's just it's basically a sidewalk mining project in terms of infrastructure, which is great. And when we bought it, it came with a mill, so we have an old mill that we've fixed and remediated and made sure that it's not an environmental liability. It's not what we'll use as a production, but it's good proof of concept that we know that there are mills in the area and there's historic production. But yeah, it's a heck of a project in the sense that it's a sidewalk mine, really.
Okay, great. Mike, how is your experience when it comes to doing business in Mexico? How is your relationship? How are your relations with the community?
Well, we've been very fortunate. The country manager actually are recently promoted to director of Mexico, Hernando Riuda, and Antonio Esparza from our team. They've done an incredible job with the community there. So we have 4 out of the 5 ejidos in our area, which are the landowning groups. They've signed up for 30-year production agreements, and the 5th, will happen, I'm sure at some point. But and we have exploration agreements with all these ejidos, and the community work and the government work that our team has done, Hernando in particular, has been incredible. I've been fortunate enough to meet the government of Sinaloa and certain people in the Mexican government, and it's always been a positive experience. We've actually created the most new quality jobs out of any municipality in all of Sinaloa, and the government has recognized us for that. So Mexico is a little bit, certainly Sinaloa is a bit of a reality versus perception thing. Yeah. And when we first went down there, we were a bit wary of Sinaloa, it's in every time we turn Netflix on, it's Chapo and all this stuff. Yes. But what we found is that it's actually a really industrious place with hardworking and kind and intelligent people that really want to mine. And I actually love working down there. I love going there. So it's been a great experience.
Okay, Mike, can you tell me more about the share structure? How much of the shares is held by big money? How much is owned by insiders and retail, if you know approximate numbers?
Well, so we as insiders, we own about 15% of the company. Nice. Nice. We've been buying, I think probably over the year, it's been 6 figures of insider buying at least. And the rest is really kind of about 50 to 60% institutional and high net worth. And then, the rest would be, your kind of typical retail holdings, which, we appreciate our retail shareholder base. It's really what our the start of our company, and even to this day, we have very strong retail shareholders in addition to the strong institutional shareholders like Franklin Templeton, the Sprott organization, Eric Sprott, Fidelity, For Sale, Extract. We have some very strong shareholders.
That's great to hear. What about how many shares do you have outstanding? Do you maybe know the numbers of warrants options?
Yeah, so it's 208 million shares outstanding, common shares outstanding, and there'd be about, I believe, another 32 million options and warrants outstanding as well.
Okay. I saw the news yesterday that you have a great addition to your team. That's a mining Hall of Fame member, Eduardo Luna, and he is now on board of the directors at your company. Besides him, who is also on your team, and tell me more. What does Eduardo is bringing to your company?
Yeah, well, Eduardo, we're totally thrilled about Eduardo, and there's probably no one better. Actually, there probably isn't a better director to come on board as it's applicable to the project. The comparable project San Dimas to Panuco, because he was at San Dimas for about, I think, 30 or 40 years. First at Luzmin, which was a private Mexican mining company that was operating San Dimas and a number of other mines. Mm-hmm. And then he sold that to Frank Justra and Ian Telfer at Wheaton River, which became Gold Corp. And that was a major mine for Gold Corp for a number of years, cash flow engine for them. And then he was involved in the stream off of San Dimas from Gold Corp to Wheaton Precious Metals. And that's what started Wheaton. He was an original director of Wheaton Precious Metals, recently just retired from Wheaton. So not only does he have direct, mining experience with their direct analog San Dimas, but he's got, an incredible amount of business experience and also really a steady hand in Mexico. As Mexican national, and knows everybody in Mexico, really. So we're just so thrilled to have him on. And he complements the rest of our board. Craig Perry, my partner, who we talked about earlier. Craig's our chairman. He's also one of our top shareholders. He's put a lot of, I think $5 million of his own cash into the company since going public. And this would be his biggest precious metals investment, certainly. And Craig's success with Skeena and NextGen and Tigers Realm, EMR Capital, Rio Tinto, all throughout the years. Simon Smirlik, who is the COO of Ausenco Engineering, and Ausenco, builds these mines like Vizsla, all around the world, and I think they're the best mine builders around the world. They built Las Chispas. They built all the big copper mines in South America. So great mine building experience there with Simon. And then we have David Cobbold, who's the vice chair of Macquarie Bank, who joined us relatively recently as an investor, and great experience on the M&A side, corporate transactions, et cetera. And then Harry Pockrent, who's a capital markets veteran and worked with many different groups, throughout the years, but has had a lot of success. So we've got a great board.
Sounds like very experienced and good team. I agree. Mike, what is the long-term plan for your company? Where do you see your company, let's say, 5 years from
now? Well, I think 5 years from now, very possible that we're, I think it's our vision to become a producing silver company. And our vision is to be one of the world's largest single asset silver primary producers, which I think is achievable here within that time frame. It's been about 5 years now, this past September, since we IPO'd. And, I think to go from IPO to production in 10 years with this project would be, very achievable, but it would be a huge value generator for, for our shareholders. And, I think the way you can look at this is that if we're producing out of the center of mass in the West, that's already going to be one of the world's biggest silver primary mines. But then at the same time, we're able to find new centers of mass throughout this district. This could be unlike really anything else out there. Meg Silver is a good comparable. What's possible, $1.5 billion market cap. But they have 44% of their mine. We have 100% control of our district, and really all the
makes a difference.
Yeah. So I think very much be a multi-billion-dollar company producing a huge amount of silver every year and being an important part of that silver ecosystem.
Okay, final question, Mike. Can you give us some timeline of possible news flow from the company? What and when can we expect some news from the company? Let's say in the next 6 months.
Well, the next 6 months here, towards the end of the year, what we'll likely put out here would be some more drill results from Copala, possibly some other drill results from other veins, a year-end commentary, basically. So talking about what we've done and what our vision is for the next year. We are expecting to put out an ESG report this year as well. That's been our goal, is to release that. And then the new year, really, there's probably a few surprises coming down the pipeline, which is always exciting. Good things, good surprises. But really, the three big things that I see next year, all kind of, most of them, I suppose, are milestones that have to do with progressing the project, and then I think there's always that blue sky discovery upside. But really, the order will likely be resource update in the first part of next year, perhaps an update around the potential of us doing some test mining to understand really what the behavior of the veins are, underground when we get to Copala and Napoleon. So that could be very interesting and exciting. Of course, we, just as a small aside to this, we made the discovery of the Molino vein a few months ago, and that was through condemnation drilling. I think that once we get underground, the potential for us to find new veins that we've never even that have zero surface expression becomes really interesting, just like San Dimas. So I'm excited about that. And then it's the PEA drawing a line in the sand saying, this is these are the project economics here, and this is how we see the potential path forward. And I think that could be very robust and really great document. So that sets up the rest of the year, and from that point on, I think it's all about de-risking and discovering and that dual path.
Got it. That was Mr. Michael Konnert, Vizsla Silver CEO. Mike, thank you very much for coming to my show, and I wish you luck with Panuco project and your business path. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's been great.